Ford's memoirs give enlightening perspective of the turbulence that began early on. Negotiations between Israel and Egypt about the return of the Sinai had reached a dangerous stalemate. There was a flawed logic in the American policy toward Israel going back to the beginning. For the past 25 years, the philosophical underpinning of U.S. policy toward Israel had been our conviction, and certainly my own, that if we gave Israel an ample supply of economic aid and weapons, she would feel strong and confident, more flexible, and more willing to discuss a lasting peace. Every American president since Harry Truman had willingly supplied arms and funds to the Jewish state. The Israelis were stronger militarily than all their Arab neighbors combined, yet peace was no closer than it had ever been. So I began to question the rationale for our policy. I wanted the Israelis to recognize that there had to be some quid pro quo. If we were going to build up their military capabilities, we in turn had to see some flexibility to achieve a fair and permanent peace. What we wanted most was new momentum diplomatically. Early in February, Kissinger left Washington on a 10-day trip to the Middle East, and he achieved reasonably encouraging results. Egyptian President Anwar Sadat, he said, was trying to be flexible and to accommodate the Israelis' concerns about their security. The Israelis, however, while encouraging our efforts to push for a lasting peace, were being very tough in their demands. The Israelis kept stalling. Their tactics frustrated the Egyptians and made me mad as hell. Ford then fired off a telegram to the Israeli Prime Minister, a now legendary item that showcased perhaps one of the lowest points of the special relationship. I am writing to convey my deep disappointment over the position taken by Israel during the course of the negotiations. You know from our conversations, as well as my conversations with the foreign minister, the importance I have attached to the success of the efforts of the United States to achieve constructive results, as well as the framework that seemed reasonable to me. Secretary Kissinger's mission, which your government strongly encouraged, involved the vital interests of the United States in the area. The failure to achieve an agreement is bound to have far-reaching effects in the area and on our relations. I have directed an immediate reassessment of U.S. policy in the area, including our relations with Israel. Predictably, our reassessment jolted the American Jewish community and Israel's many friends in Congress. The Israeli lobby, made up of patriotic Americans, is strong, vocal, and wealthy, but many of its members have a single focus. I knew that I would come under intense pressure soon to change our policy, but I was determined to hold firm. This pressure culminated in yet another overwhelming outpouring of solidarity with Israel shown by the Senate, as described by the Near East Report, specifically a letter to President Ford signed by no less than 76 of the Senate's current 99 members, the text of which read in part, "We urge you to make it clear, as we do, that the United States, acting in its own national interests, stands firmly with Israel in the search for peace in future negotiations, and that this premise is the basis of the current reassessment of U.S. policy in the Middle East." Ford revealed his honest thoughts on the Senate letter. Although I said publicly that I welcomed the letter as an expression of Senate sentiment, in truth, it really bugged me. The senators claimed the letter was spontaneous, but there was no doubt in my mind that it was inspired by Israel. We had given vast amounts of military and economic assistance to Israel over the years, and we had never asked for anything in return. Quite apart from that, the letter, especially its tone, jeopardized any chance of peace in the Middle East. Because of the letter, the Israelis didn't want to budge. So confident were they that those 76 senators would support them no matter what they did, they refused to suggest any new ideas for peace. Indeed, afterwards, Kissinger bitterly complained about Rabin's willingness to treat us as an antagonist and to use the senatorial letter to support his intransigence. Among the relative few that didn't sign the letter included the senator from Illinois, Charles H. Percy, quoted in the Near East Report as saying, "I do not believe that an expression of concern for the interest of only one party to the conflict is adequate at a time when American goodwill toward all the parties is required in order to facilitate a fair and equitable settlement." Percy's failure to sign the letter was cited by John Mersheimer and Stephen Walt as a reason for his loss in the 1984 race, ending an 18-year tenure. Despite a generally pro-Israel voting record, Percy incurred AIPAC's wrath by declining to sign the AIPAC-sponsored Letter of 76, protesting President Ford's threatened reassessment of U.S. Middle East policy in 1975. He also made the mistake of calling PLO leader Yasser Arafat more moderate than some other Palestinian terrorists. Percy's opponents in both the primary and general election in 1984 received large sums from pro-Israel PACs. And a businessman from another state, Michael Goland, who was also a major contributor to AIPAC, spent $1.1 million on anti-Percy advertising in Illinois. Quoting longtime executive director of AIPAC, Tom Dine, "All the Jews in America from coast to coast gathered to oust Percy, and the American politicians, those who hold public positions now and those who aspire, got the message."